Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I'm here again with Pink and Maine and showing their May 2019 Crafty Courtyard subscription box. May's theme is Next Chapter. This is very unique and very different. Now, the kit is currently available at the time that I'm doing this, and I'm going to real quick do just a real quick show on what is in the kit. So you get your two ink cubes, you get a Back to Basics 6x6 paper pad, some bows, you get the card that tells you everything in there. Those are the colors of the basil cardstock, the yellow being pearlescent. You get a wonderful die, some yellow twine, both solid and white and yellow. This is your stamp set. Called Page Turner, and it is just absolutely adorable. So many things you can make with that, and I will say this though, as I say that, I'm thinking of those things now. When I first saw that stamp set, I'm like, oh no, I'm at a loss. But once I got going, so of course, since it's Next Chapter, we've got books going on here. The card said, you're number one in my book. Let's make a bookmarker. So I'm using some double-sided tape, and I'm going to remove the release paper, and I am using the cardstock from the 6x6 paper pad, and I wanted the polka dots. And I'm just going to set these down this strip. So what I'm going to do is cover up this piece of white with a rainbow stripe of all of these cardstocks. Now, please never fear, with all of these pieces that I'll cut off, I save every piece of cardstock. Absolutely. So once they are set and they're but right next to each other, I'm going to trim all of these edges off. I will use my small brayer just to make sure that I have a good adhesive between the two layers. I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm just going to cut right along the white cardstock because that will be the size of our bookmark. Now, this does seem it's for large books, absolutely. But again, I was just going with a size I went with. I mean, you can make yours smaller. You could even make it something that wraps around, or make it a little larger if you want as well. I've already stamped and colored my image. I did use my alcohol markers for the little pup, and I used my colored pencils for the books, just to give it a different feel, a different look. The sentiment that I'm using is every chapter is a new adventure. So I'm going to use one of my banner dies from my stash, and I'm going to cut that out because that is how I get a straight edge when I'm cutting out my sentiments. Yes. And then once that's cut out, I'm going to place my pieces down onto my bookmark. Now I'm playing with the location. I knew I wanted the sentiment to go up the side, but I wasn't quite too sure where I was going to put my image. I finally decided to put it towards the bottom and then have the sentiment coming up from it. You can see as my fingers are tapping and wiggling, that means I'm thinking. May not be a productive thought, but I'm thinking. I'm not going to use any double-sided foam on this. I mean, usually that's exactly what I would do. But in case if you do put it in a book, you do want your bookmark as flat as possible, because some people don't like the spine being bent out of whack. So I did use my art glitter glue to make sure that I would adhere those down. And now I'm going to pull out some of the twine. I'm going to use them both. So I'm just going to pull out the same length for each. And I'm going to trim that. And then I will fold this up 4 times onto each other. So I fold it in half, that's 2, then in half again, that's the 4 sides. I'm going to use my hole punch at the top so that I'll be able to thread my twine through them. And then once that's thread, I'll cut the other end so we have some loose tails. And that is our bookmark. So quick, simple, and it'd be a perfect, you could use it as a card. You could write your sentiment on the back if you're giving somebody a book. So for our next card, this was the challenge. One of the things that I challenged with. So you have this bookcase, and there's a cat laying in on the shelf, and you've got, of course, your books and a couple plants. And I'm like, I could color all of this, whether it's in colored pencils or the alcohol markers. But I'm like, I really wanted to do something different. Now, I've done this technique before. So I used my Versamark ink. And you can tell I've been playing around with this because obviously I didn't clean the stamp too well. That's okay. And after I've stamped it a couple times with Versamark ink, I'm just going to clean up the edges with a dry brush. And then I'm going to heat set this. Now, the embossing powder that I used is gold. And it is from Recollections, from my local Michael's down the street from me. I use their fine detail gold. And then once that's heat set, now this is sharp just the way that it is. I mean, at this point you could use some dye inks or sprays. You could use a pearlescent spray. You could water down some watercolors and just watercolor throughout this. Absolutely. I mean, you could get some really colorful ideas. But what I chose to do was dig into my colored pencils for a brown that would match this gold. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add the shading to the image. So I've done this before where I've stamped it with white and then added the white colored pencil to it just to give it some shading. And then mainly it's with the white. I think I've only done this. So I wanted to try to see what this would look like because there's some beautiful swirls in the bookcase to represent the wood. So I thought, okay, maybe if I just shade it, it would all, come together. I have to say, it's different and I do kind of like it. So again, this is what we do. We try new things. We try ideas. When we have a thought, give it a try. What's the worst thing that can happen? Maybe somebody won't like this card, and that's okay. It's just something different to try. Look at the technique that I'm using. Use it in a different way. Use it on a different stamp set that maybe you have in your stash. But this is just what I saw when it came to this stamped image. Now, I got even more excited as I kept on going with it. I really did like the way the brown meshed in with the gold, and when you added the shading to the items, it kind of let them stand out more. So when it came to the books, I came from the bottom up. So it's darkest on the bottom and it's going lighter at the top. That helped to make the books stand out just a little bit more. When it came to the pots for the plants, I made sure that I came in on each side to help that look round, to give that more dimension and shading. So that's why I did that way. For the cat, there's just some areas where there's going to be some shading at the hip or the back leg, coming from her neck or his neck, and then of course coming up from his chin up onto the face. Some areas are going to be colored in solid, such as the heart, and some of the flowers in the flower pot down below. And again, it's just to help make those stand out. The books that were laying on their side, I kept the shadow to the one side. I do not worry about light source. So I went with what I was looking at. I'm just saying. So that is our piece. So I'm going to stamp my image, and I'm using, or my sentiment, I'm sorry, and I'm using dark brown cardstock, and it says, all of my favorite chapters include you. I'm going to use the same gold to heat set that, or the same powder for my sentiment, and then I will heat set that with my heat gun, and then I will use the same banner dies to cut that out because I wanted that really close. I'm going to put a lot of double-sided foam tape on the back of this just to make sure that it's going to stand up off of the panel. Now, I was going to put this directly down onto my standard A2 size card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and mine are generally top folding. But there was something missing. So one of the frame dies that I have is the cloudy frame. I just think it's cute. But what's great about this image fits perfectly in that, which is very exciting for me. I mean perfect, like a glove. So I chose one of the cardstocks from the 6x6 paper pad, and I just loved the plaid. So I wanted that for the frame, so I'm going to set that down directly onto my card base, and then I'm going to remove the release paper on the back of my image, and I'm going to set that down right in the center. That's one of the things that I love about that frame die. The center cuts out. You know, a lot of times, you know, to save paper, if there's a paper pad, you know, we use every inch of that paper. So if we have a frame, you know, we'll cut the frame out, but then we'll cut the center out because you won't see it because you put your panel on top. This die set automatically does it, which is awesome, because I always forget. And I remember after the fact, and then I get upset because now I'm like, okay, I don't have my paper. Okay, enough rambling. Sorry. Using my art glitter glue again, I'm going to set that right down along the side next to the panel, and then I'm going to add some of those gems. I'm going to add a couple onto the frame, and then I'm going to put one right in the center of that book up there. And then it's just going to add just a little bit of bling, trying to make that center, because they do stick very well. Just saying. And that is our second card, or project. So, for the next one, I saw a rainbow. I love the colors of this cardstock. They're, you know, they're not the traditional brights. You know, the red is like a real sharp maroon. The orange is like a peach color. So I really like that. So I dug into my stash and I found my stitch cloud dies. So I cut one from each of the colors. So we have 6 colors here. And now I'm just going to lay them in rainbow order. So I'm just playing with it because, again, I have 3 of the different, so I'm thinking, okay, if I shift these over, if I go over this way. But I also wanted to make sure that I was fitting on my panel. I'm going to have a stitched panel that these are going to sit on. So I kind of played with the arrangement, but I really love the way that looked. The clouds, the puffiness, the plaid stripes going through it. I think it's really different. I'm going to use my tape runner just to put these down. I'm just going to use one line. I'm not going to use any foam tape. You're talking 6 pieces of cardstock here. So there's no need to add any more dimension to it. But I also want to make sure that I'm not up close to the clouds because I'm not sure where my sentiment's going to go. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to have it coming out of the clouds or what I was going to do yet. So I'm still looking at that. I pulled out the friend die that comes in your kit. And I cut out the shadow or the matte with vellum and black. And then I used for the sentiment itself white. So I'll be layering the white ones together. I cut 3 just to make it a little bit thicker. And I wasn't sure if I was going to use the vellum on top, excuse me, on top of the black cardstock. But I knew I would lose it with what I was thinking about. So at least by putting the vellum that comes in your kit on top of the black, it makes it look gray, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, I figured that out. So I'm just going to use my glue, and I have it in a fine tip bottle, and I'm just going to layer all of these together. I'm surprised I have not lost my 3 dots for the eyes yet. They are still up in that corner. Usually I would have lost them by now, and not a problem. I would have just used a white gel pen. Absolutely. I'm going to set that down onto the vellum, and I am going to use an acrylic block just to hold that in place just for a little bit. I want to make sure that I have a good bond between these two. I'm then going to set my eyes, trying to use as little glue as possible, and set those in place, layering all 3 also. I'm using a wax pencil to pick up those tiny little dots to make sure that I don't lose them. And again, I get my wax pencils. I found them, or actually, I was watching another video. Oh, her name's right on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me. And she had talked about them. So ever since she had made mention of them, they are just wonderful. I think they work just great. So I have that all layered together. Now I'm going to use my tape runner, and I'm going to set my rainbow clouds in place. I want them to come from the bottom, and I just wanted to make sure that they were straight. And now I'm going to use my scissors just to trim off the edges. Now this, got to use a lot of pressure here because of all of the layers that you are going through. At one point you're hitting them all. And then as you get through it, it gets a lot better. Here's where it's a little sticky. But the scissors I'm using are by Fun Stamper's Journey and Spellbinders. They truly are non-stick. But they are very sharp. You'll see why. Not in this video. So, it's amazing. So I want the friend to come out of the clouds. I think that looks really cute. And then there was another sentiment that I pulled out from the stamp kit. Now, it's okay. I actually cut the stamp. It can go right back together. It's fine. Matter of fact, not this one do I cut that sentiment. I'm jumping ahead of myself. So friend is the sentiment that I have there. So I thought this was cute with all of the rainbows. I just really do like the color of the cardstock. While it's definitely rainbow, it's got a different tone to it. And I really did like that. I used my Spectrum Noir glitter pen just on top of the friend, just to give it some sparkle and shine. And to even add more, I'm going to add more of these gems that have a great hold. And I'm just going to add 3 of those there. So for this one, I'm still working with the die. So I used a rounded corner rectangle die from my stash. And I'm going to set the mat down onto that, and we're going to make a shaker card. So I've cut that out, and I'm going to use my glue. I'm going to make sure in the points that come in that I remove some of the excess so that it doesn't squeeze out. And I'm going to place my acetate down. Now I've just trimmed that to make sure that it fits perfectly onto our piece. The cardstock I'm using is the pearlescent yellow basil that comes in your kit. And now I'm going to set my double layered of double-sided foam. I've lost my train there. And I'm going to set all of this in place. So there's going to be a lot of foam on this, just to make sure that the sequins will stay where they need to stay. So of course I always fight with the packaging, because that's just what I do, and sequins tend to stick with me. Yes. So to make this easier, I'm going to dump the rainbow of sequins into my triangle trays there, and then that'll help. It'll be easier for me to get it into the area where I want it. So of course I've got to clean up. Yes, I always have to clean up when I use sequins. And you can see just how well they just come right out of the triangle. I'll remove the release paper. I have a piece of white cardstock that I will be putting onto the back of this. I was going to have a different color, but I really want the colors, the bright colors of the sequins to show. And I think nothing will do that better than white. And then when I cut out the sentiment itself, friend, I used the red that came in the kit. So far, I have not lost the dot for the eye, which I'm really surprised at. And I'm going to glue this right down onto the acetate. I'm using very little glue. I'm hardly putting any pressure. Or you can just use dots, and then that'll help without any glue squeezing out in excess. I'm going to put a small dot down for my eye. And now that is set. So here is where I'm going to cut a sentiment. I grabbed the same red that I used for the friend. And here's where I'm going to cut it. So, it's okay. Cutting your, and it took me a while. I even hesitated on this one. I wasn't quite sure that I was going to do it. But there's a sentiment in there that says, "Thanks for being fantastic." And then it says, friend. So what I did was I wanted the friend at the top to be the ending of it. Now, what I should have done, okay, is I put it, you'll see that I put it below. I'm going to use my fine detailed white by Brutus Monroe, and I'm going to heat set that. So this was a whole process here. But I'm okay, because it's going to say, "Thanks for being a fantastic," and then you just go up to the top, and you'll see friend. Probably somebody will say I should have put it up top, and you're right, absolutely. But for me, that's not a reason to get rid of our card. We keep going, we let it go. It's a handmade card. It makes it different. So I'm going to trim off the edges. I did use one of my banner dies from my stash, and I'm going to have that come right off of the bottom there, and I'm just going to even that up with the side. And I will set that down using some double-sided foam squares that I'm going to cut in half and make a strip of those along the back. So we've got a lot of dimension on our card. And I'm just looking at this card, and I even have a sequin inside the card that I just found. Oh my goodness. Sequins are everywhere. Once that's set, I will use one of the absolutely adorable bows, and I will use a glue dot to put that bow down onto my card. I was toying with either the red or the white. I decided to go with the white. I used my art glitter glue on the back of this, and I'm setting it down onto my standard A2 size card base, and at this point this will be a side folding card because I did make my shaker landscape. So these bows are absolutely adorable. And I think they're just so awesome because I don't have to make one. I do not do bows well at all. I cannot make a good bow to save the life of me. I struggle. It's okay. So I'm going to grab my glue dot, I'm going to set that onto the back, and I'm going to set that right down. So yes, the sentiment should have been at the top, but I think I have the same result. And it's a handmade card. So, win-win. Okay. I do hope you enjoyed the projects that I made using Pink and Main's Crafty Courtyard subscription box for May 2019. And remember, the theme is Next Chapter. All the products that I used will be listed down below, along with links to the Pink and Main subscription page, their shop, their blog, so that you can be inspired by their other products and other designers as well. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today to watch the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'd love to have you here as part of my group. And hit the bell so that you don't miss the next video. I hope everyone's having a great day. Remember, take care, but always remember what's most important here. Always be creative.